successful bookkeeper community. Happy Wednesday. I hope everyone's doing well. It is showtime. In my side, it's 9 a.m. Pacific time. I know we've got people from around North America, I think for primarily. So we got different time zones here. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. I'm going to wait another minute or two to let people trickle into this before we jump in. My guest today is Brian Hirschman from BSH Accounting. We're going to learn a little bit more about him in just a second. But Brian and I were just chatting about the end of the year and the craziness and all the client relationship calls you got to do, plus just getting ready for Christmas time. So I hope for everyone else it's starting to smooth out for you and you're starting to get excited for the holiday season here coming up and whatnot. But Brian, you were saying you were playing a lot of pickleball last week. You were traveling around and you celebrated your 40th birthday? Is that right?
I did, yeah. So I was in yes, I'm from San Diego, so I live in Dallas now. I'm from San Diego, so just hanging out there for the holidays. And yeah, as Tommy said, I've been playing pickleball for I think since at least 5 years, so pretty long time, but real into it. They call me the pickleball accountant out here.
Do they? Very cool. I love it. Well, you know what? It's funny. I was supposed to play some pickleball over Thanksgiving, and I didn't really have a chance. We had
Well,
a lot of little kids with us, and it ended up not working for us. But next time you're out in San Diego, we got to play.
yeah, I tell people too, for the people on this call, it's a great way to get business. I'll just leave it at that. It really is. And it's fun and it's a cool community. So if you
It's
guys,
the new golf, and it's more affordable, more accessible, and more fun.
yeah, I think it's easier than golf
That's for sure.
from a business standpoint. So if there's one thing to take from this is play more pickleball in the new year, if you want to meet some more people for business.
That's great. I actually love that, like quite literally, because I got a few questions I want to ask you later on about how to attract more upstream client base when you move into advisor roles and whatnot, and we'll get there. But I love that already. So, well, cool. We're at 9:02, so I know people are going to start trickling in some more, but we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll do it. So, just for introduction's sake, my name's Tommy Vincent. I'm with a company called Hub Analytics. Hub is a client reporting platform to be used by you at your practice to engage with your clients and, more importantly, to do some AI-driven analysis of your clients' financials and automatically produce really comprehensive, good reporting for them on a monthly basis with just a click of a button. We've got an array of features that helps you double check the accuracy of the accounting if you have a few people that work underneath you. And all types of bells and whistles, and we'll talk a little bit about that more later. But for today's webinar, we're going to do something a little different. So we brought in one of our clients, BSH Accounting, and that's Brian here, Brian Hirschman, and he's based out of Dallas. And what we thought we'd do is we wanted to talk to Brian a little bit more about his own transition from, basically how he got started in accounting, number one, because I know, Brian, you've got a pretty interesting story. You used to run youth basketball camps. So your journey in general through entrepreneurship to accounting, I'd love to learn more about. But then from there, really what we want to talk about is being an advisor. How do you make that leap? What drove you to start to lean more into that advisor role versus bookkeeper services, so to speak? And then, everything that comes with that, right? How do you go attracting clients that need that kind of more advisor work versus, hey, just send me a bullet point every month and that's all I need, or what's an income statement, right? There's clients that kind of run the gamut, I know, but as you get further upstream, you get a little bit more of a sophisticated client that does need that advisor work. So that's the plan for today.
Yeah. Okay.
Sound good, Brian?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Well, let's kick it off. Why don't you tell me what I'd really love to learn more about is your firm. Tell us about BSH Accounting in Dallas, Texas, and your journey to getting to where you are now.
Yeah. Thank you. So appreciate that. The full name of my firm is Buck Stops Here Accounting. I really like that the accountability of that phrase, like the buck stops with me, but it's also my initials are BSH too. So that's how my firm came to be. And then going back to I started about I'm obviously really into sports and pickleball, but my first main business was a basketball academy, and I come from a coaching background. I'm really into coaching. Originally, what my goal was to be, like a college head basketball coach. But when I got out of college, I fell in love with the development, and so I had a youth academy. I had teams. We had ran tournaments. So I really like coaching. And so for the bookkeeping, I had a lot of advisors, and there's different names for it. Advisory is kind of like coaching in my mind. I was in San Diego, and one of my mentors was like, "What are you up to now?" I was like, "I have a bookkeeping and tax practice." And he's like, "Wow, that's a big change from youth, from basketball." I said, "Yeah, but it's kind of like coaching business owners now." And so the main thing on that was when I was coaching basketball, and what I forget about it all the time, but it's one of my taglines. It's called value the fundamentals. And one of the things was in sports, the best players, what's kind of hidden, like you take like a Michael Jordan, they're actually the most fundamental players, or like a Kobe Bryant. They're actually the most fundamental. They have a lot of flat highlights, but they're the mastery of the fundamentals. And bookkeeping to me is the fundamentals. It doesn't get more fundamental than that. And what I realized was like a lot of people ignore it, just like everything else, because it's not, social media marketing or something that's a little bit flashy. But I think that so that yeah, that my story, kind of how it phased into that was, I would do coaches with advisor. I would pay for coaching, for business coaching or advisory. And they would say, okay, well, we had no books or anything to look at. I couldn't find good bookkeeping, and someone and this is the back in the day with QuickBooks Desktop, which I personally, it's the one thing that it was always, when I started my business, the one thing I do not work with, I'm very anti-desktop. So that's kind of my story now is, fast forward to now is the bookkeeping practice I really enjoy because it's the fundamentals. A lot of people need help with it. It's been interesting to see the evolution of it, but and I actually then I have a tax practice because there's some people that have tax practices and bookkeeping. Bookkeeping, no tax. I enjoy that. I have both. But yeah, it's a consulting firm. It's really it's really an advisory firm and a consulting and coaching practice with the tax return as like an add-on, and the books as an add-on at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and I love the theme of kind of tying coaching quite literally to advising, because yeah, I mean, honestly, borderline synonyms there. Because I do think a lot of that is exactly what advisory is, and I think that I also love the part about value the fundamentals. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I was a athlete. I played a lot of soccer as a kid, but we focused on that same thing, which was focusing on the fundamentals. Sharp, crisp passes, whatever it is. But in entrepreneurship, I think it's really about the numbers. And the irony is that so many folks in entrepreneurship get started without that fundamental, that mastery of the fundamentals, which is normal, right? I wouldn't tell somebody go master the fundamentals, then start a business. I don't think it really works like that. In a perfect world, I think that would actually be great, but it doesn't work like that. But I think part of advisory, to your point, Brian, is getting them the fundamentals and getting them introduced to that, and actually maybe pushing them a little bit, saying, hey, look, I know that you don't like numbers or you're not a numbers person, but this stuff matters, right? And what we found too, working with so many other folks like yourself, Brian, is that if you can talk in a way that gets through to the entrepreneur, I think that you can open up a major door for them to understand the importance of it. And one of those is whether it be like, if they're starting to get older, right? It could be succession planning. It could be exit planning. It could be talking about, hey, do you care about what your business is worth? You've been, blood, sweat, and tears for 10 years. Do you want to know what your business is worth? Like, you're not going to know these things unless you have the fundamentals of bookkeeping and accounting. So I love that. So tell me, your firm, is it just you? Are you a solo practice, or do you have any folks working for you at BSH?
Oh, yeah, I have a few employees, but I kind of keep a small model because it is an advisory practice, so it's kind of like a private banking model where you know, it's a certain kind of qualifications that I've gotten it to, and I kind of keep it smaller so I can deliver more value to people and spend more time throughout the year. Because
Yep.
you know, bookkeeping is cool because you're let's say that someone has a bookkeeper and they have a tax person. A lot of times, a tax person is we'll talk once a year and check in, and that's it. Bookkeepers are kind of if you have a client, like I have clients that are been with me for years, and every month I'm you know I have a we have our finger on the pulse a lot more on the micro than a tax person, right? We see what's going on all the time, right? So,
Yeah.
but I wanted to go back and just say one thing before I forget. The fundamentals. Also, I was, you know, as I was learning more about the bookkeeping, I think that the chart of accounts is one like fundamental for bookkeeping, and I think that you know, once you see people's books and a lot of them are messes, like that's one of the things that I want to start doing more of too, is just really hammering on the chart of accounts. And like, you know, you've seen some that are like really clean and they have numbers, and you know, that's the way that I think people should do business planning too, is where they you know, what does your chart of account look like, and what should this business look like in 5 years or 3 years? Map it out, and then you can see if you got there. So you know, I'm big on the chart of accounts, and really you know, and starting there and in the bookkeeping. I just really wanted to hammer that part. But yeah, I was
Yeah.
saying that yeah,
Love
my
it.
firm so the way that I started, and as I became the way that I started is I wanted to be it's just kind of more my personality as like a almost really remote practice. It's like it's really about like leveraging the technology and the tools, so like things like Hub and things like that. Paperless, because so paperless and remote, and you know, like more technological, because I'm a little bit younger than kind of the older regime. So I grew up with a lot of this technology. So that's kind of the other value add that I have.
Yeah, well, technology is definitely a big part of I think all of our lives today, but especially in accounting. That's actually a part of what I want to talk about today is also not only what technology is enabling your company today, but also what technology trends are you seeing that's urging you to kind of go further into the advisory stuff. But just to get a baseline, because I know for so many folks that I talk with on literally a daily basis, I think it's nice to baseline around size of clients, right? And because we talk to a lot of people and they say, you know, my entrepreneurs, they just don't like advisory. But I'm curious, what's the average size of one of your clients on a revenue basis? Are they sub 500K in annual revenue? Are they sub 1 million? Are they sub 5 million? What does that look like on
Yeah,
average?
I would say that I'm going into like my 6 year soon. So
Mhm.
that's always kind of growing a little bit. I'm probably getting closer to the at least 500, probably closer to a million minimum. But I do tell people this, that there are definitely I start there, but the exception would be, hey, I just started this business, and you know, I come from the world of development too. So I'm like, it's really about their mindset and the type of client. If they said, "Hey, I'm starting this business," and I talk to them, and I'm like, "Okay, you're going to get there based on I can tell," and you listen, then I would take someone below that. But yeah, I kind of have that metric, and I have a client application form on my website, which I think that's a great fundamental too, that I would really recommend to people, is put a form, and if somebody reaches out to you, and have a client application form. So then I ask them, I say, how much money, you know, and you can see it on my website, bshaccounting.com. And you can just, one thing to make a good client is they have to participate, right? Like they have to get you stuff. They have to answer you. Do you have to babysit them? So that's kind of one thing. It's like, if you send that to somebody and they cannot fill that form out, that's like the first like hoop that you actually, not only are you seeing if they're the qualifications, you're seeing how fast or if they can comply with that one thing. So
Yeah.
so that's kind of like where my sweet spot is, kind of like, you know, they're smaller mom and pops, where my average, you know, when I do my metrics, my average monthly client. It's probably around $600 to $700 a month. So I'm
Mhm.
like, I have some people more than that, probably a lot, some clients have been with me for a long time, might be a little bit less than that, but that's kind of where I'm at. I've had clients, my firm is not about, a bigger company. I've done this before and it just didn't work out where they want me to do a lot more and run their accounting department. That's not what I do. I'm more of advisory for kind of like these closely held, S corporations, and they might have, 10 to 25 employees max. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's so valuable. And I love that theme around kind of, it almost reminds me of basketball scouting, if we're going to continue with the sports theme and the basketball theme,
yeah,
right? But I think
yeah,
everyone's kind of familiar with that business advice about needing to kind of focus on the 80-20 rule, right? Like maybe letting go of the 80% of your clients that are really not driving a lot of value. But it's even a step before that, which is like scouting out the right kind of clients and qualifying them. Can they get you the materials that you need? Do they seem like they have a plan in place? Or are they kind of like, I don't like numbers, just do I need this at the end of the year? Those are probably not going to be a good fit for somebody who is going to want to roll into an advisor role, and if you can, or an advisory service, and if you can get to the advisory service, I think that's where you start going upstream, not in just the clientele itself, but upstream in what you can charge and what you can actually build for your practice. So
yeah,
I do love that theme. So I want to talk a little bit, pivot a little bit back to technology, because I think that's a big part of it. We see a ton going on. I mean, gosh, like, unless you've been living under a rock, generative AI is a very big theme for pretty much the entire world in any category. Then you kind of subcategorize that to business, generative AI for business, and then subcategorize that even further to accounting. I believe that both marketing, content creation, and accounting are pretty much the two ground zeros for generative AI. That's what I'm seeing. I don't see it, and I see it in every part of the business. I see it in law, I see it in HR, but marketing, content, and accounting is where I see it the most. And there's a ton coming at you. And Hub Analytics leverages AI in our own platform as well. And we'll talk a bit about that. But I'm seeing a lot as it relates to bookkeeping. I'm seeing Bookkeeper. I'm seeing Pilot. I'm seeing QuickBooks making moves in that direction. I'm curious what you've seen in the market, and if that's been kind of a little bit of a tailwind for you in moving towards advisory, kind of seeing that writing on the wall going, I need to get into that advisory level practice, because I can leverage these tools and kind of automate the bookkeeping now.
yeah.
I'd love for you to talk with us a little bit more about what you see there.
Yeah, I started off with the advisory because that hits home for me because a lot of bookkeepers really made a lot of money off the compliance side. How hard it was to say, and my fundamental is this, and what I tell my clients is saying, you're going to get a management report, profit and loss, balance sheet, and now my clients Hub Analytics too. I'm going to send this to you whether you ask it for me or not. And from when I was with the bookkeepers before, it was like pulling teeth. Oh, I'm 2, 3 months behind. I don't have it. Here, do the password to get into QuickBooks. So I just kind of stopped asking. And now I don't think you can, as each day goes by and year goes by, I don't think you can charge as much for compliance. Just bookkeepers are recording. We record history at the end of the day. We're recording history. The tax advisors kind of like, or the CFO is kind of foretelling the future, as my mentor would tell me. So the compliance, it really would frustrate me because also like these bookkeepers in the past, they would have the desktop and they viewed my books as almost like their property, almost like they were holding it hostage from me. And so now what I do like, I think the exciting part of now is like compliance in most industries and everything is just going to be an afterthought where it's like, okay, yeah, we know what's going on. This is the history. This is what happened. And so it's like, now what do we do? And I think that there's nothing to be scared about that because I think people really need to know what to do or how to read it. It's a different language for people. And I always can tell, Tommy, I'll say this, I can tell how good a business owner is really fast. And I'll teach you guys how to do it. How much are they participating and how much do they value the bookkeeping and accounting part of their business? Because the more advanced entrepreneurs and the people that really know how to make money, they are really involved and they know their numbers and they know what they're doing. The people that are checked out, they're just all I say is that it's not judging them. It's just they haven't been through enough business to understand how important it is, right? So they just, and maybe they will get there. So I tell clients like, I can give them, I'm pretty confident that I can give them a 7 out of 10 experience really easily. How do they get the 7 out of 10 is not good. How do they get the other, 8, 9? It's going to come from them because we're only as good as what comes in front of us. And going back to your point, like the technology is cool because it's helping us get the stuff from them. For example, back in the day, you'd say, "Hey, can you give me your bank statement and your credit cards?" Now it's just plugged in there. So all of that is frees up the time for us to say, "Okay, here are your books, deliver it religiously to them." But then now instead of fighting each other to even get there, now it's like, how about we meet and actually talk about the numbers and then actually yeah, that advisory part is so you can't get to the so to finish that, you can't get to advisory without the compliance
Yep.
to be hard.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit more about that actually, because I'm curious. So let's just say you've got the compliance right. That's the foundation because we know garbage in is garbage out. You can't advise with bad data coming in because we're all wasting, we're spinning wheels. When you get to the advisory part, I'd love to learn a little bit more about like how do you approach those conversations? How do you make that leap? Let's just pretend that for a second compliance is good, bookkeeping is great, the data is perfect. So how do you make that leap to the advisory conversations? How do you have those conversations? Do you poke for like certain pain points that you see that's common with entrepreneurs? Are there any like common themes that you see that you feel, oh, this is an opening for me to talk about advisory work?
Well, I think when you go over the numbers I kind of have an advantage here because I combine it with I do a lot of tax planning too. So what I start off with a lot of my tax planning, for example, I just had one, is I pull up two reports that I really like. Number one is obviously if the books are good, is the profit and loss and the comparison. So I'll look at things like first off, I'll say you made 650 this year. Last year, your sales were 500. Okay, so that's a very and I do the percentage, and I think that clients enjoy seeing those kind of different percentages as a horizontal analysis, right? I start off there with the sales. That's kind of an easy number. What's your top side sales? And I was telling Tommy this too. I asked them at the end of the year. I say, okay, you did 500 this year. What are you going to do next year? And just that goal setting. And then the next year I say, okay, you said you were going to do 900. So we're starting with some goals and planning, the quantitative analysis, and then they say, okay, we didn't do it. And then I wait the qualitative, okay, this is why not. So I like the profit and loss, that comparison when you got the good numbers and just going down the line and just going down. And I just, yeah, go down vertically and then find out the story. Okay, the advertising's way up. Okay, that they're just going to tell you, and they'll know the story after that. And also profit and loss as a percentage of income. There's some people that are backed by venture capital and their payroll is 110%. It's higher than the revenue. So things that jump out, I kind of start off at the things that jump out, obviously like net profit. And then after that, the balance sheet and just the fundamentals. And so kind of going through the books, it's just such a natural, because I wanted to do business coaching, but coaching is like, it's just kind of seen as a swear word in business, I think. I think it's like it is advisory and consulting, but like if you say, oh, I'm a business coach, they'll be like, oh, I don't know about that. But so
If you're an advisor.
my thing was just like, oh, well, the bookkeeping is like, that's going to naturally lead to that. You have the numbers, you know what's going on. So I think it just is a natural conversation. And then what I would say to everybody on this call to help them out is, as I did this exercise, I was like, oh, I think it would be cool to be a solutions provide for like every single line item. Like let's say, because what I try to do is I try to have a really good referral network as a bookkeeper, because when I went to a bookkeeper, I'll never forget. I don't think that he referred us the best people, but if I said, hey, we need this pain point, he would go to his printer and he'd print out two names and he'd give it to us. And then we'd say, okay, well, what about this? And then he'd print out another name, reach out. So I was like, okay, let me get my network, like if somebody needs a good lawyer or legal or real estate. Um, or maybe I can save them money, maybe their
Yeah.
insurance jumped up. Well, I have a great connection with a great insurance broker, and I can say, I don't want to push my people on them, but I'd say, hey, as a low-hanging fruit, on every line item, I have kind of an idea where you can maybe save money there too. So
Yeah.
everyone's winning, and you're connecting people, right?
Yeah, I love that.
I have a better tax person. That's how the referral started off. It was like the bookkeeper needs a tax person. They're asking me all these tax questions. I don't know. I would refer a bunch of people there, and eventually I just started learning it. I was like, well, why don't I just become that person? I guess that you would call that a vertical integration in a way. But yeah, it's really off the books. I mean, there's just really nothing that could be better than that for advisory.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I want to anchor back too on something you mentioned because I think it's important as people move into the advisory and start to evolve in that direction, which is bandwidth. Okay. And this is a big bottleneck for people because, we want to be able to kind of grow our businesses over time, right? And the nature of advisory work oftentimes is that you become good, you become better at this job, you start to learn how to coach, you start to filter your client base and say, hey, are they going to be an entrepreneur that's going to care about their finances, and so you learn how to do that, right? You learn how to attract the right clients, you learn how to do the advisory work yourself. But when we were talking, and when you were talking, you mentioned a lot of different KPIs. Well, if they're venture backed, it's going to be their HR, their staffing is going to be 110% of their revenue. If they're XYZ, I might look at this other KPI. And when you start scaling up your client base and you're doing that kind of work, you just get tight on bandwidth. And I think that's where, we developed Hub Analytics for that reason and say, okay, well, how do you scale an advisory practice? And what we noticed in the marketplace when we were developing Hub Analytics was there's a lot of solutions out there. And I already mentioned a couple, like a Pilot or a Bookkeeper, that's helping automate the bookkeeping and the compliance part of it. But there wasn't a lot of solutions out there trying to help automate the advisory part. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about how you're leveraging Hub and how you see it helping you scale your business this year, next year, 3 years down the road, and what that growth trajectory looks like for you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, from my angle, obviously advisory is going to be one of an advisory practice like myself, which is kind of focused on what we do is a hard thing to scale, right? It's people do. I don't want it just to be, I don't want it to just to be about me, right? In my practice, I want it to be systems and automated and things like that, and I do want that stuff, and it's hard to scale that. What I do is I just want to keep getting around more and more people that I enjoy to work with now. That's kind of my thing. Like, so I kind of, my client list is kind of like keep making that better. But then it's just like, then I can, as you get to certain levels in the bookkeeping, like you first have to get to the compliance. Then after that, you're like, okay, maybe we can do profit and loss with like classes or something. Like there, so some people, or they want profit and loss, let's say, by a job or by location. Well, we got to start here, then we got to go here. Oh, now that they're like levels in a video game. I think then it comes, okay, now let's go. We got that done. Now let's go Hub and let's get it like visual, right? Out of like, and let's actually have some graphs and KPIs. Okay. And then it's cool. I think it's like, I want to be around people that are more like want to get to the next levels of the video game, so to speak. So on the scaling part, that's where, but yeah, it's all about these tools and these technologies and these systems that you put in place. The more you do that, that's I guess it answers the question. You get more bandwidth and you can do higher level of thinking and better thinking and planning. And it's the fundamentals again. It's just you have to get the compliance down and getting it systematized and making sure that your cash flow is good and your money is good and back to the fundamentals there.
Yeah. It's ironic sometimes. I think that like as we roll into these advisor roles, we also have to be almost advising ourselves, right? And if you want to grow your business, I think everyone kind of knows that your highest and best use is a term we use a lot in my world. Your
Yeah.
highest and best use isn't doing the bookkeeping. right? Your highest and best use is no matter what, it's always attracting more customers. That is like the number one job of any entrepreneur in the marketplace. But when you are doing the bookkeeping, or when you are doing the financial reporting and the KPIs and the visualizations, and you're in Excel and now you're copying and pasting it over Word, that's just time not well spent, right? And now that's kind of one of the goals certainly of Hub Analytics, is to get people out of that work so they can just click a button and then pump out that comprehensive report that we've graduated to with that entrepreneur, and say, hey, here's the 3 KPIs that we've decided are really important for your business. How do we do this month? How do we do that month? But you can do it with the click of a button and a snap, so that you as the entrepreneur can focus on growing your business, because that's really what matters, you know?
Their highest best use, I think some people miss that. It's like their highest best use is not actually doing the bookkeeping and accounting, but I think their highest best use would be analyzing it a lot though. Like, and looking at it,
Absolutely.
analyzing it. I think that's I think attracting customers too, but I would even I'd push back a little bit on that. It might be just is knowing the numbers and the KPIs, because you can get in a bunch of customers, but then you can be losing money. So
Yep.
and not are all profit, no, not all customers are profitable. So yeah, I think that people may, I 100% or 99% agree with you, but I think that some people are like, they hear that business owners, they might be like, okay, well, let's just have our accountants deal with that. So again, it's like how advanced, I think my most advanced clients are like, they actually look at their QuickBooks. Like I'm doing their books, they actually like log in once a day, or they like look at it all the time. But they're not executing the what we're doing, right? They're not like so that's what I would say. And then you brought up a great point. I'm a big believer in this. I think that what people enjoy about my company, and I try to be like the accountant that I wish that like I had found when I was running my basketball business, is that well, I'm a client of my own business, so I do books for my bookkeeping firm on QuickBooks. I do my own tax return. Like I have companies that are clients of the business, and I need to lead by example. So I think that our role is like really leading by example, and that's kind of the advisory that it will help you. Is not really telling people, like for example in pickleball, like it's really hard to coach people like when you're not good. So, but like when you're like really good, then people start asking you how you're doing things, and then they're like that. So I kind of like I'm doing the same thing. I use Hub for my business, right? So I see it from like I'm
Yeah.
a client of my own business, lead by example, and that's a big fundamental for us.
Yeah, well, actually, also, I do love the point that you brought up about analyzing the actual numbers. And I do think it is twofold, right? I think that being the rainmaker is always, I think, important without a doubt. But then also, like, you can't have the full leaky boat, right? Can't just be in the door and out the door, right? And if you're not providing the right level of service, that's what you'll end up with. But I agree, right? I think that the highest and best use too is both. It's both. It's also analyzing those numbers. To your point, what KPIs are we even looking at? What should they be looking at? Based on my professional experience as a bookkeeper and as an advisor, where do I see maybe like an area that is a yellow red flag to me, and what KPI might align with that yellow to red flag, so that we can keep an eye on that in the future, right? And as a business person, you as an entrepreneur yourself, you're able to kind of offer that level of focus and that level of clarity for them to manage their own business. So I love that part of it. So tell me a little bit more, Brian, about where you're headed with the firm. So what does the next 3 to 5 years look like for you?
Yeah, so I am growing my tax practice. So yeah, I mean, I have a bookkeeping practice, so maybe it's a good fit. And for everyone out there, if you guys want to connect about, sometimes your clients might be looking for tax strategy and things like that. I'll probably be going a little bit more into tax. I still love the bookkeeping side, so I'm going to keep that. But I got my forensic accounting bookkeeping. I did a program where I got licensed in forensic accounting. So that's part of my practice that I'm also really passionate about, that I would like to grow that side. I just got that this year. So it's called a forensic bookkeeping certificate. and I got really into and it's interesting what's going on like in politics where there's like $3 trillion worth of fraud in there's a lot of fraud in the government, people making payments to people that are not alive or not, like things like that from a and there's a lot of advisory there from like the forensic and stopping that. So that's kind of where I'd like to see myself build that piece and get even more involved with my own clients as they build and grow. Some of them I've been asked to be like a fractional CFO. So like becoming a little bit more involved with my top clients. I really enjoy. So there's like levels of my service. There's like the bookkeeping, and then it's like there's tax, and then I have so I want to grow, and grow with the clients that I really care about, and it's fun. Like they are like the players that I used to coach. It's like I'm watching their journey and helping be a support. And we're seen as kind of like the more boring side of the business, right? I just see it as like making money and bringing in customers. That's the offensive side. That's what people like to watch. That's offense. But we are the defensive side of their system. We are and the defense can be boring. Fundamentals are boring, but they're not when you're winning championships. They're not. It's not boring when you're winning. So that's that you got to have a good defense, and that's what I would say from the to do a sports. Yeah, this is the defensive side.
Well, great. Couple more questions, folks. We're going to wrap it up here. But Brian, what advice would you give? Well, actually, I got a couple of questions here for you from the audience. So, what's one thing you wish you knew about bookkeeping and advisory before you got into it? What's one thing you would tell somebody who's thinking about getting into it that you wish somebody had told you?
I would just say I can't really think of anything off the top of my head on that besides the fact is it's like I think as you get experience, it's really an experience thing of reading people and like and being okay. Someone did tell me this, but I guess I'm just gonna reiterate it for and he said it kind of as I started. He's like, you're gonna lose clients and there's gonna be people that are not gonna be a fit for you, and that's okay. Like that's so be okay with like, as long as you lay out, and I always do this, like I lay out, this is what I'm going to give you, this is what I need from your side. It's the holding people accountable because I used to do this a lot. Like I feel like I good at holding my end of the bargain, but I wasn't good at like saying, hey, you were supposed to give me this and I can't give you, I can't do my job if you don't do this, and I'm doing everything on my end. Where are you at? You're checked out, right? So it's like if people start doing that, I guess it's really, holding the buck stops with me, but they have to participate and I'll give them, you have your client. I guess this would be the one tip I'd say. There's these two type of clients. There's one that they can only execute when they're on a meeting with you. So for example, you ask them, hey, I have 10 things that I need to know. And they're like, okay, we need to do a meeting. And that's not the client that I like to work with. My client is, I'm going to send you the Excel. And then they write the notes and they do the homework on their own time. And then they send it back to you. Does that make sense? Like, so it's really about.
Yeah, absolutely. We call that synchronous versus asynchronous work, right? We don't always need to be together in a meeting to achieve something. Let's start working a little bit more asynchronously and get stuff done a little bit more efficiently.
Just learned something new. I'm going to write this down.
There you go. There you go. All right. Any other advice or tips that you would provide any bookkeepers out there who are really making the leap to advisor, right? And when they're starting to get into that world, anything that you would offer them?
Is there any question? I don't know if it's live or anything because I didn't have any feedback, but I don't know if anyone was getting anything out of this or enjoying it. But is
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I don't see any questions right now, Brian, but if anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot them off right now as Brian kind of closes out some of his tips and advice. And if there's more questions, I'll let you know, Brian.
Yeah. What was the question that you just asked? Or was it just about
any other advice for bookkeepers who are trying to make that leap to an advisor role? And making that kind of transition for their own selves and their own business.
Yeah, just get better at it and practice it by and give out initial consultations and sometimes just if you haven't done it, do some free consultations and ask people, would you be interested in doing a deeper dive into your books and seeing if I could save you money, or You know, I think that if you the cool thing about advisory in our business is that we can save them more money than we charge them if we do it right. So I think that a client would I'm trying to pick the right word, but they'd be kind of fools not to want to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree. I think a big part of it too, what I see a lot of is, I think a big part of it is kind of representing yourself in a certain way up front, right? If you're networking around and saying, I'm a bookkeeper, I'm just a bookkeeper, whatever it is. No, say, I'm an advisor, right? Just throw it out there, right? And then those people who want to come and work with you, if you get a sales lead or anything like that, it already immediately opens the door to asking questions like, all right, well, let's take a step back. What are your goals for the business? How long have you been at this? And what is the goal for 3 to 5 years? And just by asking what their goals are on a personal level and for their business, I think starts to lead you into that advisory level conversation right out of the gate. But you do have to kind of prep the customer for that, right? You can't say, oh, I'm a bookkeeper, and then say, oh, what are your goals? They're like, well, I don't know. I don't want to talk about that. Well, but if you say, oh, I'm a bookkeeper and a financial advisor for businesses, then they're kind of be prepped for that going into those conversations. And I think it really opens the door for folks. We do have a question here, Brian. What's a good tech stack when offering advisory?
I actually have a tech stack. I have it written all out and and I can send it to anybody that they want, like all the stuff that I use. Hub Analytics, in terms of it just that I can send that out. It just depends on like what you're looking for to help them with. But I think that that clients are very visual too. I think that the numbers can intimidate them. So I think that things that where you can put them in visual and visual the presentation of things are would be the best. So that's taking the QuickBooks and putting them into charts and things like that are good. So
we agree. Here,
I forgot what I was gonna say about. Oh yeah, I was saying I wanted to just touch on your point. I like thinking of it as a lot of people they'll tell you their issues and challenges. I kind of just really like to listen to the client and ask the right questions, but then the advisory is kind of you're kind of like a financial doctor. Like you go in, they tell you your symptoms, and then at the end you say, okay, based on what you told me there, this is what I'd prescribe. So I'd say I think that's a really kind of simple way to think of it as being like you're just prescribing things for their problems. And again, lead by example. I always think in terms of like this is what I even say it all the time. I'd say if this were me, this is what I would do. This is what I would do here. So tech stack, I like to use for advisory. I think just good communication is good. So like I use I guess this would be kind of more for compliance, but I use something called Carbon. It used to be called Intuit Practice Management. But yeah, really.
Yeah, practice management software to kind of automate some things and
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
well, great. Look, if you've got a list of tech that you use, Brian, feel free to shoot it my way, and with the successful bookkeeper, we'll get it out to the community as a drop off. But we're gonna wrap it up. Brian, thank you so much for joining. This has actually been a lot of fun. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience from kind of making the leap from bookkeeper to advisor with your clients. Unless there's any other questions, we will wrap it up. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their hump day, and we'll be back again sometime soon. Brian, thanks again. Take care, everyone.
see you guys. Thank you.